Ride or die.
I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint.
Ride or die.
In order to be held responsible?
Yeah, like you can hold a child responsible for disobeying their parents when they might not have, like if they caused some atrocity, they're still responsible for disobeying their parents, even if they didn't know the full implications of what they were going to do before they did it.
They also
Well,
walked with God in the garden, so they had God right beside them. It's like I don't know how any closer God could get to you.
Yeah, I also just want to let you know Carlton wants to have show an objection to your view when people are ready.
Wait,
If we
first, before they do
yeah,
that.
when everyone's
So
done, yeah.
Jack, have you had any responses to this that you found like are convincing or satisfactory, or no?
no, absolutely not.
Okay.
Leela, I'll give you a syllogism
Hang on,
in the
hang on,
back
hang on,
channel
hang
that
on, hang
refutes
on.
it.
I want to ask Jack a question real quick. Jack, I don't know where this falls into it, but isn't there a big problem with God creating the Garden of Eden and then allowing the snake into the garden to coerce Adam and Eve? Like, don't you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, absolutely, right? I mean, if the serpent is an evil being, right? What the hell is a perfectly good, all-powerful being doing, putting him there to, cause cause calamity, or even if we don't want to say cause calamity, you might want to say something like tempt the possibility of calamity. It just seems like something incomprehensible.
Yeah,
Just straightforwardly contradictory, really.
I mean, that argument makes no sense because if you want free action agents with the ability to choose, you have to give them the ability to not choose you. So I don't know why this is even a problem anymore.
Because you wouldn't put a gun on the coffee table with your 5-year-old kids and be like, I want you to have the ability to choose. You'd hide the gun, at least until they were capable of discerning it.
I don't.
And
Yeah,
also,
but
my point was
yeah,
in
but say
asking
they
Jack that
did pick up the
question.
gun and kill
My
somebody, right?
my
They
point
can't.
was that he could have put the tree there and told them not to eat from it without having the serpent there to
Yeah,
coerce
the
them to do
serpent
so.
would be the gun in this
What
analogy.
I'm saying is that if you have this tree, you're telling them not to do it, but you also have another free will agent, which is the serpent. You've given that agent free will. That agent is choosing not you. Then the other agent who you've said don't eat of this tree, or this consequence shall happen. Then you run into the other free will agent. That free will agent presented an argument. You believed that free will agent and said, well, did God really say? I mean, all this works perfectly fine.
Well, I don't. So, what are you saying? Are you saying that they are functioning correctly? That they do have all the available information? That they are not coerced?
Yeah, I don't see any coercion there, and I don't see that they didn't have enough information. I see that they had enough information in that juncture to know that there would be consequences for this.
It just sounds like you don't think the good is the action guiding norm.
So you could still have good as the norm, as in what you want to be the outcome, but then there are situations where, like giving a kid a shot with a needle, that the needle's going to hurt, but ultimately, hopefully the vaccine within that helps them.
Okay, now you're switching.
I'm just using an
now
example.
You're talking about a different solution to the problem of evil than the one you were just giving, which was a free will theodicy. Now you're talking about some kind of greater good theodicy.
Well, no, when you presented that critique and criticism of what I just said, that would be the response that addresses that, bats it away, and then we go back to the original analogy.
So look, just trying to get clear, right? Do they correctly judge what they ought to do?
Yes, I believe they had enough information to make a correct decision, and they chose not to.
Yeah, so if you think that they're not coerced and they were in possession of all the available information, it seems like you're then just saying that you don't think the good is the action guiding norm.
You can still have the good as what's should be their guidance. It should be, that is the goal.
I'm not
That is
talking
the
about
mark.
what should be. I'm not talking about what should be.
So
I'm talking about what is.
if you want
For instance,
people,
take a look. Take God for example, right? If God deliberates, right, He's always going to do what He judges to be good, right? Would you say that God is not free?
no, but that would be a separate discussion,
Why?
because now we're moving from human free will to then discussing God and His choices and His actions, and whether
Wait
or
a
not
minute.
He
When
has
you
free
say
will.
God is free, do you mean it in the same sense that you mean that humans are free?
We have a limited version of the free will that God has.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, for example,
Do you think that there's freedom in heaven?
in heaven, I believe that there is freedom. We've made the choice to give up certain things, and so in doing so, those limitations are self-imposed, and God is helping us.
Well, I'm just trying to understand. Can you choose evil in heaven?
Like I'm saying, we've made the free will conscious choice to reject evil and to no longer choose it, and God is helping us maintain that. So it's
So
our
was that a
choice.
yes or a no? I don't see. I ask these simple questions, and then you don't answer them. I just don't understand this. This is why I get angry.
I'm telling
Yeah,
you that
no
your
shit.
question is faulty, because I do have free will in heaven, and I'm saying that if from that free will in heaven, to get to heaven, I have chosen that there are certain actions that I don't want in my life anymore. God
so
is now helping me with that
my
choice.
My question was, can you sin in heaven? You're saying that's a faulty question?
No, I'm saying you can't sin in heaven.
Okay, so that was just a question that I was asking for a simple yes or no to.
Yeah, no, you can't sin in heaven.
Yeah, you can't sin in heaven, right? And you said you have free will in heaven, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then I don't understand this stuff about. So it's clearly not the case, right, that the capacity to sin, on your view, right, is required for freedom.
It's like you ignored the other point that I made twice.
I'm just trying to get clear on this point.
Yes, but if you don't pay attention
Okay,
to
so
this
we
next
agree that freedom is not. Sorry, that freedom does not require the capacity to sin.
point, I'm saying if you don't pay attention
That's
to
a
this
yes or
next
no
point,
question.
No, we're not saying that freedom wouldn't cause you the ability to not be able to sin in that sense. No.
Okay, so freedom is not. So the capacity to sin is not required in order to be free. So it's not actually freedom which is at issue, right?
You're missing the other point, and you won't let me say it. The other point is that we have, of our own free volition, chosen God and requested to not be able to do this anymore. So it is our choice to not sin, and God is helping us maintain that.
I didn't ask you that. I'm talking about the garden.
You
Right?
said
In the
heaven.
garden, Adam and Eve are free, right? And they have the capacity to sin. But the capacity to sin is not required for freedom. So I'm asking, why do they have the capacity to sin?
Okay, because we were just talking about heaven. You want to move back to the garden?
I'm asking, why do they have the capacity to sin?
Because if you want people to be able to freely choose you, you have to give them the option to not choose you.
If you want people to freely choose you, you have to give them the option to not choose you.
Yes. Both
And
A and B.
what explains why they don't choose you?
Because of that free choice action, you've given them that ability to decide for themselves.
No, we're granting that the choice is free. I'm asking what explains, right, why they choose one thing rather than the other.
The creaturely desire.
Wait, so they have a desire to not choose you. That explains it?
In this particular case, that individual has a desire to not choose God.
Yeah, so why did God create them with that desire rather than the desire to choose?
In this case, it's a desire that they have influenced through their own actions.
Wait, so then we just need to go back to the first sin.
Which we've been talking about.
Yes, see, because the point is, I'm trying to understand if it's the desire that explains why they do what they ought not do, then what explains why they have that desire?
In this case, the first sin was not necessarily a desire to not choose God, but it was a questioning of what God said. So they have this perfect being who's in the garden with them. They believe that this perfect being has the best intentions. That perfect being gave them this information. Then this other free will choice agent presented other information, and they questioned God. And so in questioning God was the original sin.
Okay, so they were wrong to question God.
Yes.
And why did they question God?
It's the same thing. In order for people to have the ability to freely choose God, in the same sense, you have to have the ability to freely question God.
I'm asking what explains why they questioned God rather than that they didn't.
He gave them the ability to question him.
Yeah, I'm granting you that. I'm asking why is it, right? Because presumably having the ability doesn't explain why you do it in one case and don't do it in another. So something else has to explain that.
Because you want an agent, a creature who will freely want to love you, want to choose you, want to follow you, and want to
I didn't
trust
ask you that. Didn't ask you that.
That's
Granted you
why.
that.
That's why you
I
have to give
granted you
them.
that. I asked you, right, in a case, right, where you have the ability to do either A or B, right? And in this case, they did A. Why did they do A rather than B?
And I've been very clear because you have to give them the option. If they don't really have the option to
I
do B
granted
instead of
you
A,
that. I granted you that in the question. They have
and
the option.
I'm
I'm
saying
asking what explains why they do one thing rather than the other.
they did it because they have the choice, Jack.
I'm asking you, right, given that they have the choice, why did they do one rather than the other? Having the choice is compatible with them doing B rather than A. I'm asking why they did A rather than B. Obviously, they have to have the choice to do one or the other.
Because the serpent presented them with a counterfactual. They believed that, and then they ate of the fruit.
Yeah, now why did they believe it?
Because if, like I've been stating over and over again, if you want the people to freely choose you, you have to give them all the capacity and even real world options to not choose you. In this case, allowing the serpent to have his own free
I asked you,
action.
why do they believe it? Did you hear my question? Can you listen to what I'm asking you and answer what I'm asking you rather than answer something that I'm not asking you? Why did they believe it?
I'm explaining that to you. You just don't want to listen.
Did anybody hear him say why they believed it?
No.
Did anybody hear that?
And you wonder why I got mad at you last night, James.
You're so dishonest. I just can't believe it.
See, what happens in these rooms is instead of like trying to understand each other, you
Now
go
you're
to
gonna
psycho
start. Now
mode.
you're gonna start with this meta garbage that you do every time where you out.
Yeah, if an atheist loses their mind in
Okay,
a
shut your
conversation,
mouth. Shut your mouth. Shut
I
your mouth.
can't
Okay,
help
this is
it.
what I want you to think about. Okay,
Wait,
I'm
James,
trying
I
to
have a
understand.
question.
Right? Were they right to believe that or not? Right? So did they have sufficient information to come to the correct conclusion or not? I want you to think about that, come up with a answer, and get back to me when you understand the answer to that question.
Well, didn't they want to believe it because they wanted it to be true?
Well, you tell me. If they wanted it to be true, right? Did they actually know better to know that they shouldn't believe merely what they wanted to believe? Because it seems like if you're functioning properly, right, you're going to think, well, that's not an epistemic reason to believe X, the fact that I want to believe X, right? And so given that it's not an epistemic reason to believe X, I shouldn't let my desire for X to be true to interfere with my coming to the correct judgment and then acting on what I correctly judge to be the correct judgment. That's the mystery.
Yeah, that's kind of wishful thinking on Adam and Eve's part then, right?
Yeah, we already talked about this with a number randomizer example from a few days ago. You create a number randomizer, it can pick any number 1 through 5. You're not surprised when it has a different number than the preferable outcome. I don't see why this is a problem when you're looking at free will. When you want people to be able to freely choose you, you will ultimately have some who do not. So just because you have a preferred
I'm asking
outcome,
what explains it.
then we get into consciousness, and that's something I don't think that very few people are
Look,
qualified to
you're not
talk
understanding the dilemma, right? If you say that A explains, if you say X explains why they do A rather than B, I'm just going to ask, well, why is it that X was there rather than not, right? So it seems like what you have to say is that nothing explains it, in which case you're just rejecting the idea that the good is the action guiding norm, right? Which is what I've contended from the outset. That's the problem.
about. And I'm just still not seeing your objection.
Layla, do you understand the objection?
I don't think she's in here right now. I don't
Hey,
see her.
James, I have a question for you. So you talk about how free will, like God gives people free will because He wants them to have the freedom to choose to love Him, right?
Yes, he wants them to have the free agent choice, yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, does He already know who's going to choose Him?
So I don't believe that foreknowledge equals causation. You would have to show a link.
So you're no, but the point though is that God already knows who's going to choose them. So He knows which. So He knows which timeline of events is the real one, and He knows which people are going to choose Him. And so my question then is, why didn't God just create those people, and people wouldn't have to suffer in hell forever?
Yeah, I think that in order for you to have a real choice, you have to create people who are not going to. It'd be like creating number randomizer machines, but setting the number randomizer machines to always pick number 1, and you only create those. Well, have you really
Can you
created a
answer the
number
question,
randomizer?
please?
I'm giving him an answer. I'm saying that have you really created what you've wanted to unless there is a true ability to not?
Well, the thing though is that in that situation, I would already know what the number is going to be. If if it was random and I knew what number it was going to generate, I already know which number it's going to be. So I don't need to create other numbers. I don't need to create this random generator because I already know the number is going to be 1, right?
So the issue though is when you have these number generators, and the number generators can also affect each other. If you remove some of them, you are probably going to change the outcome of the other ones they were going to affect. This is more than likely. So in this situation, if God wants people to freely choose him, you have to have people who are not choosing him. That's out of logical necessity.
Okay.
Now, if you create a group of people separate from that, then all you've done is created a group of people who you programmed to choose you, and they didn't really ever have an option to not.
Okay. So let me see if I understand you. So if God were to create only the people who would have chosen him in the correct timeline of events, then that would basically screw with the whole thing. That would basically change the future and change which people would choose him, and so he would have to create this other people in order for that to happen. So wouldn't that mean then that God's not really all powerful?
No, because he has the ability to force everybody to choose him, but he doesn't have the ability to do logically impossible things. So if he's got like the number sequence 1 through 10, you want to get to 10, Now, if you take away all the odd numbers, now all you have is the even numbers. That's
Mm-hmm.
not going to equal out your desired outcome. You can't make that math work. You have to have logical connections between it, because God can do everything except for what is illogical.
Okay, so would you say that there then is such a thing as fate?
That's a deep question. I'm going to have to think on that one a little bit, because I think there are some things that are just way beyond our control, and there are some things that we won't be able to affect. But I'm going to have to think on that one some more for you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's perfectly okay.
I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint.